Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now I will explain to you about culture and language. Before then, I will to introduce myself. My name is Adelina Syakinawaty Dongoran. My nickname is Adel. And then this is a cross-culture understanding course. Okay, before discussing definition of culture and language, we get to know only culture and language first. So I will start with introduction culture and language. Many people who go abroad encounter features in their host culture that they may find disturbing. Reaction to this alien aspect of the new culture can depend the entire experience in the country, resulting in various kinds of negative reaction. Learning another culture, developing relationship with the people you meet, communicating eventually, and adapting to the environment is a complex of cross-cultural understanding. Cross-cultural understanding is concrete with understanding people from different cultural backgrounds or culture of the people so we can construct our attitudes and worldview more tolerable and generous towards strange ways that may be shown by other citizens of another country. If a person from alien culture means traps complex pattern of culture, then cross-cultural misunderstanding arise. Then we will discuss about culture. The culture is divided into 4 parts. The first discuss about definition of cultures. The second discuss about cultural universal, and the third discuss about types of culture, and the fourth discuss about culture patterns of behavior. So I will start from the first is definition of cultures. Cultures come from Latin cultura, means cultivation. Then the definition of culture according to expert is the first British anthropologist Edward Tyler, and the second Neumann, and the third Clever Gears, and the fourth Larson and Smelly. So I will from the first British anthropologist Edward Tyler says, first gave the definition of culture, which is widely quoted. Culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, law, custom, and any other capacities and habits acquired man as a member of society. And the second, Neumann. Neumann says, describes culture as a way of life of a certain society which is expressed by certain language. And the third, Clever Gears. And Clever Gears says, stated that culture is a symbolic meaning system. It is a semiotic system in which symbolics function to communicate meaning from one mind to another. Cultural symbolic and called a connection between a signifying from a signal meaning. And the fourth, there are Larson and Smelly. Larson and Smelly say, blueprint. It guides the behavior of a people and community and is developed in family life and help us to know what we can do as individuals and what our responsibility a member of a group. Next, from the standpoint of contemporary culture. Next, from the standpoint of contemporary cultural anthropologists, culture is characterized by the following 4 basic features. First, culture is a kind of social inheritance instead of biological heritage. Second, culture is shared by the whole community, not belonging to any particular individual. Third, culture is symbolic meaning system in which language is one of the most important ones. Fourth, culture is a unified system, the integral part of which are closely related to one another. In general, culture can be divided into 3 categories. First, material culture as the product of human manufacture. Second, Social culture as the people's form of social organization. Third, ideological culture, including people's beliefs and values. This is a picture. The picture about culture itself is like an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is the smallest part. Most of the iceberg is submerged. The external part of the culture, including behavior, clothing, food, is the smallest part. Meanwhile, the internal part, including like beliefs, values, norms, and attitude, is beneath the weather level of awareness. In every society, there is a set of cultural beliefs which in a large measure defines the implicit culture of that society and set it off from another society. The belief system of society includes all the connections, namely ideas, knowledge, superstition, myths, and legend shared by most members of society. Cultural norms are rules of standard behavior accepted by members of society. Norms are divided into folkways and morals. First, norms are called folkways, then conformity to them is not considered vital to the welfare of the group, and when the means of enforcing conformity is not very clearly defined. In American folkways, specified that on formal occasion, a man should wear a tie. The punishment of this conformity is that he may be frowned upon or talked about. Second, morals. Morals are norms which specify behavior of vital importance to the society and which embody its basic moral values. The example of the moral is that man must provide for his wife and children. Next, value is collection of guiding principles. What one deems to be correct and desirable in life. Cultures have values that are largely shared by their members, which identify that should be judged as good or evil. Values tend to influence attitude and behavior. For example, American values human equality, or further discussion about American values will be in the next chapter. Then I will discuss about cultural universal. Cultural universal are elements common to all human cultures, regardless of historical moment, geography, or cultural origin. There is a tension in cultural geography and cultural sociology between the claim that truth is a universal, or the fact that all human society have a culture, that is also particular. Our culture takes a tremendous variety of forms around the world. Kunjaraningrat 1990 categories culture universal into seven, namely: first, language; second, knowledge system; third, social organization; fourth, lifestyle system; five, livelihood system; six, religion system; and the last, art. The ideal cultural universal itself runs contrary to cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is the idea that all norms, beliefs, and values are dependent on their cultural context and should not be used in the study or description of another culture. Cultural relativism is, in part, a response to Western ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is a tendency to look at the world primarily from the perspective of one's own culture, judging another culture solely by the values and standards of one's own culture. Ethnocentrism may take obvious forms, in which one consequently believes that one's peoples are are the most beautiful, values the most virtuous, and beliefs the most thoughtful. Next, I will discuss about types of culture. The word culture doesn't mean just national culture, but the whole range of different types of culture. This include 1. Corporate culture, for example, the culture of Apple, Microsoft. 2. Professional culture, for example, the culture of doctors, lawyers. And 3. Gender, different cultures of men and women. 4. Age, the different cultures of young, middle-aged, and old people. 5. Religious cultures, for example, Catholicism, Muslim, Buddha. 6. Regional culture, for example, Western, Eastern. 7. Class culture, for example, working class, middle class, and upper class. Then I will discuss about culture, patterns of behavior. Culture have widely characteristics, but such patterns for living according to some anthropologists have universal characteristics. George Peter Murdoch in Tomaso or 1986 mentioned 7 cultural patterns of behavior, namely 1. They originate in the human mind. 2. They facilitate human and environmental interaction. 3. They satisfy human basic needs. 4. They are cumulative and adjust to change in external and internal conditions. 5. They tend to form a consistent structure. 6. They are learned and shared by all members of the society. 7. They are transmitted to new generation. Then we will enter into the second part, namely language. According to Sapir or 1921, language is a purely human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas, emotion, and desire by means of voluntary product symbols. Language is a part of culture and a part of human behavior. It is often held that the function of a language is to express thought and to communicate information. Language also fulfills many other tasks such as greeting people, conducting religious service, and etc. Language and culture are intertwined because language is an outcome or result of a culture as a whole and also a vessel by which the other aspects of culture are spread and communicated. 3 major functions of language are: 1. Language is the primary vessel of communication. 2. Language reflects both the personality of the individual and the culture of his story. In turn, it helps shape both personality and culture. 3. Language makes possible the growth and transmission of culture, the continuity of societies, and the effective functioning and culture and control of social groups. Then I will enter into the last part, namely the relationship between language and culture. The function of language is so important in communication that is even exaggerated by some scholars. The most famous one is the hypothesis concerning the relationship between language and culture, which Nida and Tabor or 1982 regards as misconception. Constitution carries difficulties for cross-cultural understanding. Each culture has its own peculiarities and throws special influence on the language system. For example, referring to the same common domestic animal like dog, a great deal of cross-cultural misunderstanding occurs when the meaning of the words into the language are assumed to be the same, but actually reflect different cultural patterns. Some are humorous, as when a Turkish visitor to the US refers to eat a hot dog because it was against his beliefs to eat dog meat. We can summarize the relationship between culture and language as the following. First, language is a key component of culture. It is the primary medium for transmitting much of culture. Without language, culture would not be possible. Second, children learning their native language are learning our culture. Learning a second language also involves learning a second culture to varying degrees. Third, language is influenced and shaped by culture. It reflects culture. Fourth, cultural differences are the most serious areas causing misunderstanding, unpleasantness, and even conflict in cross-cultural understanding. Alright, that's the result of my presentation. Excess and less, I apologize. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.